Hi, this is Rick David with PA Bruin Radio. I'm sitting here with Coach Kevin Kelley of the PA Bruins. Today what we'd like to be able to do is kind of talk a little bit about the upcoming 2015 season. Coach, I understand that, right now is hype season. We haven't done anything really yet other than the scrimmage against Bryant. Everybody's kind of talking about what happened last year in 2014, the state championship season. People were sitting there going, okay, PA Bruins, they're defending state champs, but this is a new team. What do you want to be able to take from that 2014 team and bring into the 2015 team and also establish a new identity?
One of the things we always want to carry over from year to year is the buying into what we do and the tradition of winning. A long time ago, somebody, we'd go into a new season and make their predictions, and I'm like, it's not the same kids. How can you make those predictions? And they would say, but tradition matters. And I thought, I just don't understand that. But then I did, because our kids walk out there and they expect to win based on what's happened in the past. And I think that mindset and that confidence level is a lot. We want to carry that over from the previous year. And winning that state championship, there's two ways that it goes. You either get real lax in your off season because you feel pretty good. We won one. Okay, let's all rest and relax and enjoy it. But then you can also go, I really like that feeling. I want to get back there again. And I think that's where our kids are.
That's great. That's great. I think, the big thing you fight is complacency, coming from a state championship season, thinking that's automatically going to happen. And when you look at your summer program, 7-on-7, the weight room, the team camps, what were you able to see in the off season that kind of surfaced really against Bryant, because it was a dominant win over Bryant? What carried over? What did you take from the off season that you're now starting to see with this team?
Good and bad. In the off season, I look at our kids and we're just not very big. On defense, we've got one kid, our defensive end, that weighs over 200 pounds on the whole defense, and that's no matter. We've still got a few starting positions that are right there neck and neck, but there's going to be one kid. Now that's phenomenal when you start talking about the schedule that we play. That's where we are. But we talk about the work ethic and how important that is and deserving to win. I thought they put that in. We require a lot of time in the summer and in Monday, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays weights and working out and core work and stuff like that. And the weekends doing 7-on-7s. All that's for football too, but it's also because I want them to feel like they deserve to win. And I think somewhere in the back of your mind, you might go a little harder when you're a little tired or the guy across from you is, if you think you deserve to win because you put in that time and effort. And that's one thing I take out of the summer. Our kids have put in all that time. And, everybody says, I want my kids to be in the best shape and I want them to put in the most work. And, I don't know about all that, but I would say that we've put in more hours than anybody else in the state of Arkansas and maybe anywhere in the country as far as what we require our kids to do. And I want them to understand that hard work pays off. And I think that they carry that into Bryant. Then we got into Bryant, we had no idea what we were going to do. Like you said, it's a new team. Although we're a championship team from last year, a lot of those kids are gone. It's a whole new mindset in some respects. And to go into a school like Bryant that thinks they're going to compete for the 7A state championship, and they really believe that, and with that big offensive line and defensive line, our kids performed extremely well for where we were in the season, and I really, really respect where they are right now because they're a lot further ahead than even I thought, and I'm a pretty negative thinker.
Well, last year, the game against Bryant was a difficult game, to say the least. This year was a dominant win. And one of the things that you could really see with this ball club was solid fundamentals. You do an excellent job with the scheme, having coached down in Louisiana, seeing Arkansas football up close and personal. No doubt, it's some of the most exciting, if not the most exciting football that I've ever seen. But one thing that I think kind of gets left off the radar is how well you coach your team from a fundamentals perspective. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
I think there's a million different ways that you can win games. And you can win with X's and O's, you can win with hard work, you can win things. But you could identify, I feel like as a coaching staff, some things that we have to be able to do all the time and do them well. And those are the things that you build on. And I think our coaches do a really good job of buying into those and teaching those things. And we never forget tackling. We work on that hard, and people talk about tackling and do that, but we work on it in a specific way. We're going to tackle low. We're not really trying to get the big hit. We want the guy to go down on the ground because we don't want our guys to be injured. And we'll even bring in a guy outside that's not even one of our coaches to help teach that. And because I think the kids kind of listen from a different perspective. Catching the football is a fundamental thing, and just how you do it. And we want to throw more passes in practice and catch more balls each week than anybody else in football. We limit what we do on the offensive line to just a few handful of schemes because we want to be able to do those fundamental things really well. And you have to when you're not as fast or you're not as big. You better have those fundamentals down. I think our coaches do a really good job of not only buying into that, but teaching those things as well.
Great, great. Simplified approach also leads you to the ability to do some new things, add some new wrinkles. Obviously, there's been a lot of attention on the new wrinkles that you're putting in particular the rugby tosses and things of that nature. We didn't see too much against Bryant, but I'm assuming that that's in the repertoire somewhere. Could you elaborate a little bit more on it?
Yeah, I wish I'd never called it rugby because it kind of went nuts, and every rugby coach in the country, I'm talking head Division I coaches, the head coach of the men's national U.S. team, they've all contacted wanting to be a part of it. And I'm like, no, not that kind of rugby. I'm just talking about pitching the ball around a little bit. But we want to basically is what we want to do is I was looking around, I was looking at stats that tell if you win or lose, and the number one stat that determines if you win or lose, people would say turnovers. It's not turnovers. It's who has the most 20-yard plays in a game. And besides changing your offense, because I like what we do, what else could we do? And I was looking around, watching rugby, and I thought the continuation of the play is pitch the ball around a little bit. And people do that at the end of games in dire situations, but they don't do it in the middle of the game. So I had some ideas about that, and it kind of went kind of wild and probably overboard. But there's a lot of butterfly effects to that too. If you can do it, I don't want to do it all the time. I just want the chance to do it 3 or 4 times a game. Mm-hmm. If we can get an extra 20-yard play from pitching it once or twice or 3 times, then so be it. If we can do that without having a turnover at the same time. And then also what it'll do is defensive coordinator-wise, if you can be effective in that, it puts them in a situation, like I've said many times, their coordinators now have to tell their defense, hey, don't necessarily run to the ball. You better stay with your man, because if they'll pitch it and create a lane and open it up, well, now you're in one-on-one tackling situations, which I think is the second hardest thing to do in football. So there's many things that come along with it besides just pitching the ball and playing rugby. And the Bryant game, we actually called 4 plays that we could run that on. But the kids are, I in coaching, and this, a lot of times things don't go exactly like you plan on the football field. The kid will come off the field and they'll be like, why didn't you do that? And he'll go, I just wasn't sure what he was doing. I wasn't sure where the play was going. I wasn't sure how it was developing. So I have if-then statements for everything. If you're not sure, then do this. And my thing on the rugby pitches is if you're not sure, don't call for the ball. Yeah. And so we called it 4 times against Bryant, and we just didn't pitch it any. So we actually tried it, didn't have it. But I'd rather my kids be sure than pitch it and it be a chance for a turnover or something like that. So we'll continue to work on it. It's really hard against our defense to work on. So I think if we can ever get it done a couple of times in the game, it'll open up a lot of avenues for us.
Great. Talk about certain players. Last year you had several starters that are returning this year, and then you have some new key starters. Could you elaborate on some of those players?
Yeah, the first thing I'm super happy about is having our offensive line back. I think we've got 4 guys that played a lot last year or started somewhere, and any coach will tell you having that is just key because they're experienced, they understand the blocking schemes a little more, they're a little more developed in their fundamentals of what they do. So we're excited about having those guys back with Jess Allgaier, Jackson Ward, Caden Hawes, and Seth Martin. Those are the 4 that came back, and that's a good start for us. Defensive line, we lost a lot. We got Robert Ader back, and that was the only starter on the defensive line. Linebacker, the only starter back, Corbin Witham. And he's rock solid, and I love him. But he's got a lot to work with younger guys and trying to get them lined up in the right defense. And we change our defenses on the field right before the snap a lot, and he's responsible for that. So he's got to get all those guys in the right situation, the right setup, and understand to be able to change their mentality in a split second when he changes the defense. Our secondary is going to be a strong point for us. Have Justin Charette back and Cody Anderson back in the corner, and then Hayden Henry back. So we got 3 back there. So really, you're looking at 5 returning starters on defense, and then guys that are competing over there include, Austin Ronnie was competing for a corner spot. He's kind of in there right now, but he's got somebody right behind him. Chris Lane's right behind him if things don't work out. At linebacker competing, we had Jacob Anderson. We had your son, Zach DeVede. We had Matt Warren, Peyton Titus, and Wesley Wise. We've got kind of 5 competing for those 3 spots. And we don't feel bad about putting any of those guys in right now. That's the good thing. And they've all got to be ready. They all played against Bryant, and they all played pretty well. Bryant's a 7A school with a big offensive line. We held them to 10 points, and that's including basically giving them 3 when we turned it over. We threw an interception like on our own 25-yard line. They went in 3 plays later. They made 0 yards and kicked a field goal. So, my hat's off to our defensive coordinator, what he's able to do with a bunch of young kids and get them in that situation. And then offensively, we got a sophomore quarterback, Lane Hatcher. And you never know what you're going to get with a sophomore, but I think he's going to be as ready as a sophomore could be. I'm pretty tough on him and put a lot of pressure, so the game's kind of a relief for him, I think, after dealing with me. And then running back wise, we got Trey Bruce can do anything. He can play receiver, he can play slot, he can play tailback, he can play quarterback. I'll do a lot of things with him to give other teams a lot of things to look at, and defenses to prepare for a lot of different things. And that's one of our overlying philosophies, is give them a million things to get ready for, because the more things you give them to get ready for, the more mistakes they'll make. And then Jaron Watkins, I think, is going to have a phenomenal year at running back. And then we've got some receivers that I think have a chance to really come through in Ray Jackson and Cameron Bland. Have a chance to be really good stars, or they may take a step down this year. I hope that'd be a coaching fault if they step back, but I don't want them to do that. And then, we want Cole Jones to be a senior leader for us out there at receiver. And we want Sam Starkey to step up and show what he can do, because he's a practice kid that's really good in practice. We need to take that to the game. And then my son, hopefully Zach Kelly, he'll come back. People think I'm crazy, but I'm hoping September 25th he's able to come in and get some plays in. And that's about 2 months after surgery, so it's a little early for ACL. But if we can have these other kids get us to a level and then add a few guys that are injured along the way, we feel pretty good about our chances.
Great. When you look at the 2015 in-state season, what is it that who are the top teams in that you're going, okay, we're really going to have to be prepared these weeks to play PA football?
A few teams have already played games. Sylvan Hills played a game already.
Yeah.
And one of those classic things, and they scored 62 points on Bologna, and they won 60-28. You look at that, and I know the kid they had playing quarterback for them against us last year. He's a year older, more developed, and he ran for 100 and threw for 300. That's the problem for defense. I think they're going to be right there. I think they're going to take a step forward. BB came through last year. They lost a few games early because they had their fullback and their quarterback out. When you run the dead team, they're basically running an option type offense where they're making a read on the defensive line and giving it to that fullback, and the quarterback's keeping it. They got 2 really good players there. That fullback's back. I think he's one of the best in the state. Well, they made a great run. People thought they were 0-4 at one point. They ran all the way to the semifinals and lost by a touchdown, or we'd have been playing them in the championship game. So I think they're going to be right there. They played earlier this week and beat Greenbrier 42-28, I think it was, or something like that. So they put some points on the board and played good defense against a high-scoring Greenbrier team. So both those teams are going to be right there. Batesville's always going to be there in 5A. Just a phenomenal coach. Dave King does an outstanding job with them. Hopefully we're going to be there. We think that we've got a chance. I think Hot Springs is going to be really good. Hot Springs has a good running attack, good tailback coming back, and they're kind of a ground and pound, so they want to shorten the game and keep it close to the end and where anything can kind of happen. That's another team I think is going to be good. And then if you go look up in the 5A West, although they're not too far in the West, Little Rock Christian's got some really good players this year. And I really like their coach, Jeff Weaver. I think he does a good job. So I think they're going to be in the mix too. And then, if you go look down in the South a little bit, you never can talk 5A without talking about Camden Fairview.
Yeah.
They're always loaded with athletes. They got a coach that last year was his first year. They were in the playoffs. This year under his system, they're going to know a little bit more about him. He's going to know more about them. So I think you look at those 5, 6, 7 teams and pick one of those out of the hat, you're going to have your state champion.
Okay, all right. Well, now we're coming up on Highland Park. A year ago, it was a tight ball game, a heck of a ball game. I think that they don't know what they walked into a year ago. They're going to be a little bit more prepared. What are you expecting this weekend from Highland Park? I was able to see, that had a running back for Frisco Centennial that ran for over 306 yards against Highland Park. But at the same token, their quarterback completed 26 of 33 passes for over 300 yards. And their running back is kind of built like Jaron Watkins. Stephen Deeb, I think he had 17 carries for 94 yards. They're pretty explosive on offense, but it looks like they've got a little work on defense. Can you talk a little bit about the game?
Yeah, we actually went down and watched the game. And, Frisco Centennial is huge up front. And they opened some holes. Their running back's really good, but man, they opened some holes. It reminded me of the old Emmitt Smith Dallas Cowboys. You know,
Yeah.
you'd look and the hole's really wide. Now he'd get to that second level and he's got to make it happen. And
Yeah.
the kid did just that. So they were able to push Highland Park around. Highland Park's a big school. You know, there's over 2,000 kids in
Yeah.
high school. They're gonna have some big kids too. They look just like the same team they did last year. I mean, they were big up front. Their quarterback can run and throw. They have the same running backs they had last year, which is far and few between for those 6A schools in Texas because, you know, they've got a varsity team, they've got a junior varsity team that's all 11th grade and a full team. So there's very few kids that get to play on the varsity as juniors. I mean, just very, very few. So it's a different deal down there. But, you know, so people look at, well, they don't have a lot coming back. Well, they would never. Nobody in Texas has a lot coming back at that level because they play seniors only pretty much. So, but they do. They still, even then, they look identical. It's just size, the way they carry themselves. I think their coaches have a good system. And I think they plug those guys in. They go, we want a mobile quarterback. We're going to find the one that can run and throw some.
Yeah.
Even if we sacrifice the throwing, he's got to be able to run some. They plug him in there. I think they like those shifty backs that can read the holes and make cuts. And they like a big offensive, defensive line. We expect a big crowd. I think all I've heard about already from the Dallas Morning News and from people down there that have done interviews with me are the streak. The streak dates back to 1999. They have not lost a home game. 99. That's amazing to me that the ball doesn't bounce funny, a tipped interception doesn't beat you or something like that. Now, I will say the coaches I talk to, this is taboo to talk about, all the coaches I talk to in Dallas say you can't beat them at home. And I'm just finding it hard to believe that a team's that good at home, plays that much better, they'll be like, no, somebody's not going to let you beat them at home. I just find it hard to believe that people don't have the integrity, referees they're talking about, to ref a real good game. They're saying, we'll just show you and see. Well, we went down there last year and I was pleased with the way our kids, I was pleased with our effort. I mean, we're a smaller group playing against bigger guys, but we gave them all they wanted. A couple of dumb coaching calls on my part. The game might have been different, but I would say that, you know, the refs didn't beat us, Highland Park did. There were some questionable, very, very questionable calls, but there's going to be some of those sometimes, and we've got to find a way to overcome those and know that they're going to happen and not let them affect our kids' psychology and stay in the game and keep playing. So we've got to figure out how to approach that as a coaching staff. But our expectations are to fully go down there and have a chance to win the game at the end of the game.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Coach, there's one thing that you've been able to do over time, and that's buck the trend, if you will. And hopefully you'll be able to do it this weekend against Highland Park. Coach, thank you for your time today. Good luck this season.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Nice.